Alien are amazed to see humans make terrified animals. As pets, the human ship glided silently through the purple-hued clouds of Zyphora's atmosphere, its smooth metallic surface catching glimmers of the twin suns above. From the observation deck, Alina looked down at the sprawling alien city below. It shimmered like a jewel, tall towers spiraling into the sky, connected by bridges that seemed almost alive, glowing softly with bioluminescent energy. Humans had visited other planets before, but something about Zyphora felt different. The air vibrated with life in a way that was unfamiliar, even for seasoned space travelers. Alina adjusted her headset and whispered to the crew around her, "Keep your voices down. They'll hear us before we land." She had learned early in her training that patience and observation mattered more than speed. On every world, humans discovered that rushing in or showing too much confidence often caused problems. But patience could make even the most fearful creature curious. As the ship descended, Alina's eyes caught the first of Zyphora's native animals. They were small, round-bodied creatures with shimmering fur that shifted colors with their mood. At first, they seemed to cower, their large eyes wide with suspicion. When humans approached, they didn't run immediately but held their ground, twitching their ears and observing cautiously. Alina smiled. This was exactly the reaction she had hoped for. The aliens who watched the landing from the observation platforms above were tall, luminous beings with skin that seemed to hum faintly with energy. They had never seen humans behave the way they did. Other species on Zyphora used their advanced technology to control animals, sometimes creating cages or force fields, often frightening the creatures into submission. But humans approached with soft steps, gentle gestures, and quiet voices. They did not demand obedience. They waited, giving the animals the choice to come closer. Alina stepped carefully onto the platform, her boots making a soft thud against the metal surface. One of the creatures, a small, fur-covered ball no larger than a loaf of bread, took a hesitant step toward her. She crouched down slowly, keeping her eyes on the creature without staring too intensely. "It's okay," she said softly. "You're safe here." Her voice was calm, soothing, almost like a melody. The creature twitched nervously but inched closer, drawn by curiosity more than trust. Alina held her hand out slowly. The creature sniffed the air around her fingers, its little nose twitching. Finally, it pressed against her palm. The aliens watching from above gasped. One of them, a scholar named Torin, whispered to his companion, How are they doing that?" "Their species should be chaotic, aggressive, yet the creatures obey them without any force." His companion, equally luminous, shook his head in disbelief. "It is impossible," he said. "That fear is not part of their method." Humans, Alina knew, had a very different approach. On every planet they visited, they noticed that fear often made creatures uncooperative. Humans had learned to rely on something else: patience, empathy, and subtle communication. It was not strength or dominance that mattered, it was understanding. And on Zyphora, that understanding seemed to work better than anything the aliens had tried. As the humans moved deeper into the alien city, more creatures emerged. They were timid, shivering slightly, but none ran away. Humans spoke to them softly, sometimes offering small glowing fruits or delicate branches that smelled familiar. Slowly, creatures that had been hiding behind alien structures came out to watch. Children of the alien species, curious and unafraid, began observing the humans from a distance. They had never seen anything like it. The humans moved with such care, yet they did not appear weak. Every gesture seemed purposeful, every glance carried meaning. Alina noticed the alien children and smiled. She waved gently, and a few of them mimicked her, shyly stepping closer. She turned her attention back to the creatures. A slightly larger one, its fur now a deep blue, had been hiding near a tall pillar. Alina knelt, showing no sudden movements, and whispered, "Come on, little one, you don't have to be afraid." Slowly, the creature emerged. It took small, cautious steps, its eyes flicking between Alina and its surroundings. When it reached her, it brushed against her hand and let out a soft, almost musical sound. Alina laughed quietly. "See, nothing to worry about." The aliens continued to murmur among themselves. Torin scribbled notes in his luminescent notebook. "It is as if they speak a language without words," he said. "The creatures respond to something emotional, perhaps, but how can it be controlled without fear?" Alina's team had already begun setting up small habitats for the creatures. These were not cages, but safe spaces where the animals could explore freely without feeling trapped. Each habitat had soft, glowing plants, gentle streams of water, and plenty of hiding places. Humans worked quickly, yet without haste, placing small offerings around the area. The creatures approached cautiously, smelling the fruits and sniffing the soft materials. They began to relax, their fur changing color slightly, signaling curiosity instead of fear. One of the alien leaders approached, stepping lightly onto the platform. "Humans," she said, her voice melodic and tinged with curiosity. "Why do you not control them with power or technology?" Alina looked up, smiling. "Because they are not machines," she said simply. "They are alive. They have thoughts, feelings, and fears. We can help them feel safe, and in return, they trust us." She gestured toward a cluster of creatures now playing together near the water. "It's not about control, it's about connection." The alien leader's luminous skin flickered slightly, a sign of confusion or perhaps awe. "Connection," she repeated. She turned to Torin, who was still scribbling notes furiously. "You must document this. Our understanding of intelligence, perhaps we have been too limited. Humans, they are different." Alina crouched to observe a small group of creatures interacting with each other. One timid creature had fallen slightly behind, hesitating. She extended her hand again, speaking softly. "It's okay. You can come closer. No one will hurt you." The creature slowly approached, pressing its tiny body against her leg. The feeling of trust was mutual. She could sense the creature relaxing, the tension in its muscles disappearing. Around them, the city's alien residents had begun gathering. They had never seen a species approach life in this way. Technology, force, intimidation, those were the tools of the aliens. Yet here were humans achieving remarkable results without any of them. The aliens whispered among themselves, some skeptical, others fascinated, and a few clearly envious. The children were the most excited. They had begun mimicking the humans' calm posture, soft gestures, and quiet voices, hoping to learn this strange new method of communication. Alina continued her work, gently guiding the creatures to small resting areas and offering them safe spaces to explore. Even the largest and most skittish creatures began showing interest, stepping out from hidden corners to watch. The humans did not rush them or force interaction. They waited patiently, and when the creatures were ready, they responded. Torin observed silently, his mind racing. "Humans," he muttered to himself. "Their intelligence, it is not only in machines or tactics. It is in patience and understanding. They do not dominate, they persuade. They do not scare, they inspire trust." By evening, the alien city's sky had turned a deep violet, and the twin suns cast long shadows across the platforms. The creatures, once trembling and hiding, now moved freely among the humans, occasionally brushing against their legs or nuzzling their hands. A soft glow emanated from the creature's fur, signaling relaxation and comfort. Alina finally stood, brushing her hands together. She looked around at the team and the creatures, feeling a quiet satisfaction. "This is just the beginning," she said. "If we approach every world like this, there's so much we can learn and so much we can teach." The aliens watching were silent for a long moment. Then slowly, whispers of admiration spread. They could not fully comprehend how humans achieved such results, but one thing was clear: humans were extraordinary. Not because of their strength, their weapons, or their machines, but because of their ability to connect, to empathize, and to see life as more than something to control. As the stars began to twinkle above the alien city, humans and creatures alike shared a quiet harmony. The creatures no longer trembled with fear. They explored, played, and rested without anxiety. The humans had done what the aliens could not. They had turned fear into trust, suspicion into curiosity, and distance into connection. And as Alina gazed up at the glowing towers and the watching aliens, she knew one thing for certain. Scifi would never forget the humans who had taught them a new way to understand life. The morning light of Scifi crept over the city, bathing everything in a soft purple glow. The twin suns reflected off the towers, making the platforms shimmer like liquid glass. Alina stood near the edge of one of the habitats, watching the creatures move about, some exploring, some resting, and some curiously observing the humans. Their fur shifted colors with every small emotion, creating a mesmerizing display of blues, purples, and soft golds. It was unlike anything she had seen on other worlds, and she felt a quiet thrill at the thought that humans had made it possible for these creatures to feel safe in such a strange environment. Torin approached her, his long, luminous form bending slightly as he stepped onto the platform. His eyes flickered with curiosity. Alina, he began, his voice smooth but still tinged with disbelief, I have observed many species, yet none behave as you do. You communicate without words, without force, and yet the creatures obey. How is this possible? Alina smiled gently. It's not about obedience, she said. It's about trust. We don't want them to do what we want because we are stronger. We want them to choose to be with us. Patience, attention, and understanding can go farther than any technology. Torin's glowing skin shimmered with thought. He had studied humans before, but this was different. On other worlds, humans had impressed with machines or strategy. Here, their intelligence was not in what they built, but in how they related to life itself. And you believe this will work with all creatures? He asked. Alina nodded. We have to try. Every species is different, but the principle is the same. Respect and patience make even the most fearful creatures curious, and curiosity can become trust. Around them, the creatures had begun to approach more freely. One small creature, barely larger than a loaf of bread, pressed its body against Alina's leg. Another, larger and more timid, circled her cautiously, sniffing the air. Alina extended her hand without leaning forward. Take your time, she said softly. There's no rush. The creature hesitated, then touched her fingers with a soft, delicate tap, testing if it was safe. Torin watched, fascinated. No coercion, no machine, just this connection. He shook his head, unable to fully process it. On Zyphora, we have always used control. Technology, barriers, and influence are the only ways we have trained creatures. And yet these humans, they accomplish it differently, simply by being present. Alina's assistant, a young man named Daniel, knelt near another creature, speaking quietly as he held a small, glowing fruit. See, no pressure, Daniel said. If it wants the fruit, it will come. If it doesn't, we wait. Slowly, the creature approached, sniffed the fruit, and then backed away. Daniel smiled. It's learning to decide, not being forced. Across the platform, alien children peeked curiously from behind towers. They had never witnessed anything like this. Their species often used their own natural abilities to manipulate or dominate other creatures. Humans did not manipulate. They observed, they waited, and somehow it worked. The children whispered to one another, trying to mimic the humans' gentle movements and soft tones. As the day progressed, Alina led her team to the central habitat, a wide open space filled with soft, glowing plants, small water streams, and low hills for climbing. The creatures began to explore the area, some hesitant, others gaining confidence with each step. One of the larger creatures, its fur shifting from deep green to bright gold, cautiously climbed a small hill and looked back at Alina, as if seeking permission. She waved gently, encouraging it without forcing any action. The creature took a careful step forward, then another, until it reached the top and allowed itself to lie down, its eyes half closed in contentment. Torin's companion, a scholar named Lyra, whispered, They do not just tame them, they teach them to trust, to feel safe even in a strange environment. It is remarkable. Alina overheard and smiled, but she remained focused on the creatures. She noticed that one particularly timid creature was still hiding near a glowing shrub. She knelt nearby and whispered, It's okay, you don't have to be afraid. You can watch first and then come closer when you're ready. The creature hesitated for a long moment, its fur pulsing with anxious colors, then slowly inched toward her. Alina remained perfectly still, letting the creature make every choice. When it finally pressed against her hand, she felt a quiet satisfaction. Another bond had been formed. Meanwhile, the aliens gathered higher on the observation platforms, murmuring among themselves. They had begun recording every movement, every gesture. It cannot be the same on other worlds, one elder said. Humans, they are different here. Their strength is not in power, but in patience, in understanding. By midday, the humans had arranged small feeding stations for the creatures. They were simple, with soft mats, gentle glowing lights, and water streams, but designed so the animals could explore freely without fear. The humans offered small glowing fruits, carefully placing them a few steps away from each creature. Some creatures approached immediately, while others watched from a distance, learning at their own pace. Each choice they made was respected. Alina observed a pattern forming. The creatures who were previously the most fearful began to interact with each other more freely. Their fur colors shifted from anxious blues and greens to soft purples and golds. They were learning not only from the humans, but from each other. Trust was spreading quietly, almost like a ripple through water. Torin approached her again, a question burning in his mind. Why do you not try to control them with devices or barriers? He asked. Surely that would be faster, more efficient. Alina shook her head gently. Control teaches obedience, not understanding. We want the creatures to think, to choose, to feel safe. That is more valuable than speed or efficiency. If they trust us, they will follow guidance even when danger comes. If they are forced, fear will always linger. Lyra, who had been quietly observing, added, It is as if humans have found a form of intelligence the rest of us have overlooked. They understand that connection can be stronger than technology, patience stronger than force. As the day wore on, more alien children approached the habitats, mimicking the humans' movements. They knelt, extended hands slowly, and spoke in soft tones. Some creatures hesitated but did not flee. They were curious, just as Alina had predicted. In the late afternoon, a small group of humans gathered near the central water stream. Alina held a tiny creature gently in her hands, speaking softly, while Daniel placed another glowing fruit nearby. Slowly, the creatures began to approach, testing the humans' presence. One bold creature, its fur now a bright, warm color, stepped onto Alina's outstretched hand. She held it carefully, allowing it to explore freely. From above, Torin could not contain his fascination. It is remarkable, he muttered. These humans, they do not dominate, they do not force, yet the creatures respond as if they understand a language of trust. Alina's team moved through the habitat with quiet efficiency, setting up small resting areas and watching the creatures' interactions. Each animal was different. Some were naturally curious, some shy, some cautious, but all were learning to interact without fear. The humans adjusted their approach for each individual, speaking softly, moving slowly, and always giving the animals a choice. As evening approached, the creatures began to rest near the humans, some curling against their legs, others simply sitting nearby, watching. The air was filled with soft, musical chirps, the creatures' way of expressing contentment. Humans spoke to them gently, offering comfort and reassurance. Torin scribbled in his notebook, unable to keep up with his thoughts. Humans, they do not rely on fear, they rely on understanding, on patience, on empathy. Perhaps we have underestimated them for centuries. Alina noticed the glowing sky turning deeper shades of violet and gold. She took a deep breath and looked at the creatures, their small eyes reflecting curiosity and trust. This is only the beginning, she said quietly. If we can teach creatures to feel safe here, we can do the same on other worlds. Trust can spread. Understanding can spread. We only need to be patient. The aliens, still observing from above, were silent for a moment. Slowly, murmurs of admiration spread through their ranks. Even the most skeptical elders began to nod thoughtfully. Humans were no ordinary species. They did not rely on strength or machines alone. They had something different, something difficult to understand but impossible to ignore. By the time the twin suns had fully set, the habitats were alive with quiet activity. Creatures explored without fear, humans moved among them with care, and alien children watched from a distance, trying to learn a new way to connect. The sky above shimmered with the colors of twilight, and the soft sounds of content creatures and gentle human voices filled the air. Alina finally stood, brushing her hands together and looking over the habitats. She felt a quiet pride. Every creature that had once trembled with fear now felt safe enough to explore, to interact, and to trust. The humans' methods had worked, proving that patience, empathy, and understanding could achieve what technology and force could not. Torin stepped beside her, still fascinated. You have shown us a new way, he said quietly. Perhaps humanity is teaching us something we never realized we needed to learn. Alina smiled, watching a small creature climb onto a child alien's hand. That's the hope, she said. If they learn even a little from us, it can change everything, and we will continue to teach quietly, patiently. That is how trust grows. As night fell over Xiphora, humans and creatures rested side by side. The alien observers had gone back to their towers, their minds filled with wonder. The humans had shown them something extraordinary. That intelligence was not only about machines, power, or speed, but also about patience, empathy, and the quiet strength of understanding life itself. And on that quiet night, Alina knew that the seeds of change had been planted, both in the creatures who now trusted humans and in the aliens who were beginning to see humanity in a completely new light. The next morning, the sky over Xiphora glowed with soft amber and violet hues as the twin suns rose. Alina stepped out onto the platform, her eyes scanning the habitats. The creatures were already active, some exploring the edges of the small streams, others cautiously observing humans. Everything seemed calm, but Alina knew better than to assume peace would last. Her assistant Daniel approached carrying a small container filled with glowing fruit. "Alina, look at the largest one," he said quietly. "It's behaving differently today." Alina followed his gaze. A creature, larger and more timid than the others, was pacing near the edge of the habitat, its fur flickering with anxious colors. Its movements were sudden, jerky, and hesitant, almost as if it sensed something in the air. Alina knelt to the ground, speaking softly. "It's okay," she said. "Nothing's going to hurt you." The creature paused, flicking its ears, then slowly inched closer. Torin, who had been observing from a nearby platform, whispered to Lyra, "Something is different. Its behavior is heightened." Almost as if it anticipates danger. Lyra nodded, her glowing skin flickering with concern. "I have never seen a species respond this way unless there is a change in the environment." Alina studied the creature for a long moment, her intuition telling her that something was coming. She had learned over the years that creatures, especially timid ones, could sense disturbances long before humans could. She stood and signaled to the rest of her team. "Let's make sure the other creatures are secure," she said. "We need to guide them calmly if anything happens." Throughout the morning, the creatures seemed restless. Small groups huddled together, their colors shifting rapidly, signaling anxiety. Human voices were everywhere, speaking gently, offering food, extending hands slowly, and providing reassurance. Alina led by example, kneeling beside the trembling creatures and letting them approach at their own pace. The aliens continued to watch, fascinated by the humans' ability to calm the animals even when something seemed off. Then, without warning, a series of distant rumbles echoed through the city. The ground shook lightly, and the creatures' reactions were immediate. They froze, ears twitching, eyes wide. Some bolted toward hiding spots while others pressed close to the humans. Alina moved quickly, spreading her arms calmly. "It's okay," she said. "We're here, you're safe." She made no sudden movements, her voice steady and soft. One by one, the creatures responded to her calm presence, returning slowly to the open space. Torin watched in astonishment. "They react with fear, yet they listen to humans," he murmured. "No technology, no force, just presence. How can they trust so completely?" Alina nodded to Daniel, who was gently guiding a particularly anxious creature back from the edge of the platform. "They feel our calm," she said. "Fear is natural, but if we remain patient, they choose trust over panic." The source of the disturbance soon became clear. A storm was approaching, not a typical storm, but one unusual for Zyphora, with shimmering clouds that carried a faint, strange energy. The alien researchers muttered among themselves, noting that the creatures' heightened senses had predicted it. The humans, however, remained focused on the creatures. Alina assessed the situation. "We need to move them to the inner habitat. It's safer there and they'll feel more secure." The creatures hesitated. Some were curious, others afraid. Alina walked slowly toward them, her arms extended gently, offering reassurance rather than command. "You can move with me," she whispered. "Step by step. You are safe." The creatures responded, taking cautious steps forward, testing their surroundings. Daniel placed glowing fruits along the path, creating small points of interest. It wasn't a trap. It was a way to guide them gently without forcing movement. Slowly, the timid creatures began to follow, their colors calming as they sensed the humans' patience. Even the largest, most anxious creature began moving, pressing close to Alina as if seeking comfort. The aliens watched with a mix of awe and disbelief. "This is remarkable," Lyra said. "They have no force to compel the creatures, yet they move them safely." The creatures obey because of trust. Alina led the group into the inner habitat, where soft, glowing plants provided cover and low hills offered hiding spots. The creatures explored cautiously, but the humans' calm presence encouraged them. Small chirps of relief echoed across the space as creatures settled into safe areas. Torin approached Alina once the creatures were mostly secure. "Humans," he said softly, "you seem to have an ability we cannot comprehend." The storm could have terrified them, but they responded to your patience. "How is it possible to maintain such control without fear?" Alina looked at him, her expression calm. "It's not control," she said. "It's guidance. Fear forces obedience. Patience inspires choice. We don't need to dominate to be effective. The creatures choose to trust us because we respect their feelings." The storm's energy began to intensify. The air shimmered, and distant lights flickered across the habitat. Some of the creatures were restless again, sensing the approaching energy. Alina and her team moved through the habitat, speaking softly, letting the animals approach and retreat at their own pace. Their method worked consistently. Fear did not rule the interaction, and the creatures began to stay calmer than expected. Torin and Lyra continued observing, their fascination growing. "Perhaps we have underestimated the potential of humans," Lyra said. "They solve problems differently, not by force, not by devices, but by understanding." Alina noticed one of the timid creatures hesitating near the edge of the habitat, eyeing the shimmering sky. She crouched and spoke gently. "It's okay. You can stay here." "You're safe with us?" The creature hesitated, then stepped closer, pressing against her leg. Another creature joined, and soon small groups gathered near the humans, finding comfort in their presence. Hours passed as the storm's energy rippled across the city. The creatures, guided by humans' patience, remained largely calm, exploring the inner habitat, eating the glowing fruits, and resting near humans. Daniel and the other assistants moved slowly among them, offering reassurances and letting each animal decide when to approach. Torin's notes were nearly full, his mind racing to understand. "No other species would respond this way," he said to Lyra. "Even our younglings rarely show such trust when danger is near. The humans, they possess a different kind of intelligence. One that combines understanding, patience, and empathy. Perhaps this is a strength we have overlooked." As night fell, the storm finally began to dissipate. Soft, glowing rain fell gently over the city, washing the platforms and habitats in shimmering colors. The creatures, now fully settled, explored cautiously, their fur reflecting soft hues of blue, gold, and purple. Humans spoke to them quietly, guiding, encouraging, and reassuring without any force or urgency. Alina looked over the creatures, her heart swelling with quiet pride. They had faced fear together, and trust had prevailed. The aliens had watched in awe as humans accomplished what advanced technology and authority could not: calm, cooperation, and understanding in the face of uncertainty. Torin approached one of the larger creatures, kneeling carefully. He extended a glowing hand slowly, imitating humans' gestures. The creature hesitated, flicking its ears, then pressed against his hand for a moment before retreating. Torin's skin shimmered with excitement. "I see now," he whispered. "It is not the species that is remarkable, but the human's method. They inspire trust, even in beings accustomed to fear." Alina knelt near a cluster of smaller creatures, speaking softly as they moved around her. "This is why we do what we do," she said quietly. "We do not impose, we observe, we guide. And when we are patient, we discover that even the most fearful can find courage." The aliens, now fully aware of the humans' unique abilities, began discussing quietly among themselves. Some were inspired, imagining new ways to interact with creatures they had previously deemed uncontrollable. Others were skeptical, but even the skeptics could not deny the results. Humans had achieved the impossible, turning fear into trust, hesitation into calm exploration, and isolation into connection. By the time the twin moons rose over the horizon, the city glimmered in the soft light, reflecting a quiet harmony. Creatures rested near humans, explored safely, or interacted with one another in small groups. Humans moved through the habitats with care, observing, guiding, and teaching through presence alone. Alina finally stood, brushing her hands together. She looked at the creatures and then up at the aliens observing from above. "This is only the beginning," she said quietly. "Every world has challenges, every species has fears. But if we approach them with patience, empathy, and understanding, we can build trust that no force or technology can achieve." The aliens, for the first time, began to see humans differently. Not as weak, chaotic, or fragile, but as clever, patient, and remarkably strong in ways they had never considered. Humans did not rely on fear, domination, or control. They relied on understanding, compassion, and the quiet strength of connection. As the night settled over Zyphora, Alina sat quietly with the creatures, watching the glowing reflections in their fur. Each small chirp, each flicker of color, each cautious step was a sign that trust had been earned, and the aliens had begun to recognize that humanity's true power lay not in machines, not in strength, but in patience and empathy. The city, alive with bioluminescent lights and the soft sounds of creatures and humans together, felt different now. Something subtle had shifted. The aliens who watched had learned that intelligence could be measured not just in technology or tactics, but in the ability to connect, to guide, and to inspire trust even in the face of fear. Elena smiled quietly. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will continue. There is much to do and much to teach. And who knows, perhaps the creatures and even the aliens will learn something from us as well." And as the twin moons rose high into the sky, reflecting in the soft waters of the habitats, a quiet thought settled in her mind. Trust, patience, and understanding were tools stronger than any machine, more effective than any device, and more remarkable than any weapon. Humanity had proven it again, and the galaxy was beginning to take notice. The morning on Zyphora arrived slowly, the twin suns casting long golden and violet beams across the city. Elena stepped onto the platform with a quiet determination. The storm from the previous day had passed, leaving behind a crisp, clear sky, and the habitats were now filled with creatures moving freely, some exploring small streams, others resting under glowing plants. The energy of the creatures was calmer now, and yet the humans knew that their work was far from over. Torin and Lyra had arrived early, their glowing forms bending slightly as they approached the humans. "Elena," Torin began, his voice carrying a note of awe, "we have observed your methods since yesterday. What you have achieved, it is unlike anything we have seen. Not just calming creatures, you have inspired cooperation, curiosity, and even bravery. The creatures now respond to you without fear, and yet they are fully alive, fully themselves." Elena nodded gently. "It is not about controlling them. It is about understanding them and giving them the space to choose. Trust cannot be forced. Patience and attention do more than any technology." She looked across the habitats, seeing creatures that had once trembled in fear now exploring confidently. Small groups chirped softly at one another, and the humans spoke in quiet tones, guiding without commanding. Lyra's skin shimmered in fascination. "And your species, you do this naturally, without thought, or is it learned?" "It is learned," Elena said softly. "Every human learns that rushing, forcing, or intimidating rarely works. On every world we visit, every species responds best to calm guidance. It is not instinct alone, it is understanding." The aliens observed closely, taking notes, recording, and whispering among themselves. A small group of alien children approached cautiously, imitating the humans' slow gestures and soft voices. They extended hands toward the creatures, who hesitated, then nudged forward, testing the children's calmness. It was clear that even the young aliens were beginning to learn from the humans' approach. Elena smiled. "It's not only about the creatures," she said. "It's about showing that kindness, patience, and understanding can work anywhere. It is a lesson that can spread." By midday, more aliens began gathering on the platforms. Word had spread quickly through the city that humans had achieved something remarkable. Scholars, officials, and ordinary citizens alike observed the interactions between humans and creatures. Some were skeptical, others curious, but all were captivated by the results. The creatures, once timid and fearful, now explored the habitats, approached the humans freely, and even displayed playful behaviors. Daniel knelt beside a small creature, extending a glowing fruit slowly. "You can take it," he whispered, "when you're ready." The creature paused, sniffed the fruit, and then gently took it with a tiny paw. Its fur shimmered with satisfaction. Elena watched, noting every detail, every movement, and every shift in color. The aliens who observed could not believe their eyes. No species on Zyphora had ever interacted with these creatures this way. Torin stepped closer, his curiosity growing. "It is more than calming them," he said. "You have taught them to trust. Even when danger like the storm approaches, they respond to you because they understand. They understand that you are different, that your presence is safe. How do you teach this?" Elena smiled softly. "We do not teach it directly, we model it. We show calm, we show patience, and we show respect. The creatures notice, they feel it, and then they choose to respond. They make a choice to trust." The aliens exchanged glances. This was a concept difficult for their species to grasp. On Zyphora, most interactions relied on authority, technology, or influence. The idea that trust could be earned without any force, simply through presence and understanding, was revolutionary. As the afternoon progressed, the creatures began to explore more boldly. The timid ones ventured to the streams, touching the water carefully, chirping softly, and glancing at the humans for reassurance. Elena moved among them, kneeling, speaking, offering small gestures of comfort. Even the largest and most skittish creatures had begun to relax, moving freely without hesitation. The aliens continued to observe, whispering among themselves. Some were inspired, trying to mimic the humans' calm posture and soft gestures. Others remained skeptical, but the results could not be denied. The creatures responded to humans' patience in ways the aliens had never seen. Torin turned to Lyra, his expression serious. "Perhaps we have underestimated humanity all along," he said. "Their strength is not in weapons, not in machines, not in technology. It is in their ability to connect, to understand, and to inspire trust. This is a form of intelligence we have overlooked." Elena noticed the alien children observing quietly from a distance. Some had started to kneel, extend their hands slowly, and speak in gentle tones. The creatures responded cautiously but positively, moving toward the children with small, careful steps. Elena approached one child and whispered, "See, patience works. No rushing, no forcing. Trust grows when you wait and listen." The child nodded, trying to mirror her movements. The creatures responded, testing the child's calmness. One tiny creature pressed against the child's leg, chirping softly. Elena smiled. "Exactly. You are doing it perfectly." The humans worked throughout the afternoon, guiding the creatures, observing their behavior, and providing small comforts. They never rushed, never forced, and never reacted with frustration. Their calm presence alone influenced the creatures to explore, interact, and feel safe. The aliens who watched were slowly beginning to understand that this was not mere luck. Humans had a unique approach, one that relied on empathy and patience rather than technology or force. As evening approached, the city's twin suns began to set, casting soft violet and gold hues across the platforms. The creatures had fully settled into the habitats, some resting near humans, some exploring the glowing streams, and some interacting playfully with one another. The aliens gathered to discuss what they had observed. "It is remarkable," Lyra said, her skin flickering with admiration. "These humans do not rely on fear or authority, and yet they achieve results no one else could. They have created trust where there was only fear. They have inspired cooperation instead of hesitation. This is intelligence beyond what we imagined." Torin nodded, his mind racing with possibilities. "They have not only tamed the creatures," he said, "they have influenced the children of our species. Even the young are beginning to understand patience and trust because of humans' example. Perhaps humanity's influence could extend far beyond this city." Elena, observing quietly, reflected on the work that had brought them here. Every gesture, every quiet word, every careful action had contributed to the bonds formed between humans and creatures. It was not power, not technology, not dominance. It was patience, understanding, and empathy. And now, the aliens were beginning to see that humanity's intelligence extended far beyond what they had imagined. By nightfall, the creatures rested peacefully under the soft glow of the habitat lights. Some nestled against humans, others curled near glowing plants, and some remained in small groups, communicating softly with one another. The humans moved quietly among them, ensuring their comfort, speaking softly and guiding without forcing. Torin and Lyra approached Elena as she knelt beside a small creature. "Humans," Torin said, "you have shown us something extraordinary. Your species does not rely on strength alone. You teach through presence, patience, and understanding. Perhaps this is why humanity survives and thrives in ways we never anticipated." Elena looked up, smiling softly. "Every species has something to teach us," she said, "but sometimes we have to learn to listen. Trust and patience work everywhere, even in places where fear is strong. The creatures, the children, even the adults, all respond when we offer respect instead of control." The aliens nodded, their glowing skin flickering with thought. They had never encountered a species that influenced the galaxy in such a subtle yet profound way. Humans' methods were unlike anything they had seen, yet the results were undeniable. Trust had been earned, fear had been reduced, and cooperation had blossomed. As the night deepened, the humans and creatures shared a quiet harmony. The city seemed alive with soft colors, gentle sounds, and a sense of calm. Even the aliens who had once been skeptical could not deny the changes they had witnessed. Humanity's presence had transformed not only the creatures, but also the perceptions of the alien society. Elena stood, looking across the habitats, her heart swelling with quiet pride. Every creature that had once trembled in fear now explored safely. The aliens had begun to see humans not as fragile or chaotic, but as patient, clever, and remarkably capable of building trust where others had failed. The city lights reflected in the streams and on the fur of the creatures. The aliens continued their observations, whispering about the humans' methods and the lessons they could learn. Slowly, a subtle transformation began in the alien society. The children who had learned from humans would grow into adults who valued patience and trust. The creatures would remain calm, guided not by fear but by understanding. Alina knelt quietly beside a small creature, brushing her hand along its soft fur. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we will continue. There is much to do and much to teach. Patience and trust can spread, and perhaps even the aliens themselves will learn something new." The twin moons rose over the city, casting soft reflections across the habitats. Humans and creatures rested together, sharing a quiet understanding. The aliens who had observed the day's events could not ignore the evidence. Humanity's intelligence, patience, and empathy had made an impact that would last far longer than a single day. Alina gazed at the glowing fur of the creatures, their soft chirps filling the air. She knew that this was only the beginning. Humanity's presence had planted the seeds of change, not through force or dominance, but through understanding, calm guidance, and respect. The aliens had begun to see a new form of intelligence, one that could shape worlds without coercion, one that inspired trust rather than fear. And as the night settled over Zyphora, the quiet harmony of humans, creatures, and aliens reflected a simple truth. Patience, understanding, and empathy could achieve more than power, technology, or control. Humanity had shown the galaxy a new way to interact, and the effects would ripple far beyond the city, perhaps even shaping the future of the alien society itself. The sky above Zyphora glimmered softly in the early morning light, the twin suns casting gentle violet and gold streaks across the city. Alina stood on the edge of the platform, looking out at the habitats below. The creatures moved freely among the glowing plants and streams, their fur shimmering in calm shades of gold, blue, and soft purple. It was a quiet harmony, a sight that had seemed impossible just a few days ago. Humans had arrived as strangers, yet now their presence had transformed not only the timid creatures, but the way the alien society observed and understood life itself. Torin and Lyra approached quietly, their glowing forms bending gracefully as they moved across the platform. "Alina," Torin began, his voice tinged with awe, "we have studied your methods since your arrival, but the results continue to amaze us. The creatures are calm, confident, and curious. Even our younglings are beginning to imitate your patience and gentle ways. You have done more than teach them trust. You have changed us." Alina smiled softly. "It is not about changing anyone," she said quietly. "It is about showing what is possible when you choose patience over force, understanding over control. Trust can grow anywhere if you give it space to flourish." Lyra's luminescent skin flickered with excitement. "And it has. I have never seen anything like this. Your species, humans, you are clever in ways we cannot measure by machines or by power alone. Your intelligence lies in how you connect, not how you dominate." Alina knelt to a small cluster of creatures who had gathered near her, extending her hands slowly. "It's okay," she whispered. "You can explore, you can play, and you can rest. Nothing will hurt you here." The creatures chirped softly in response, brushing against her hands, nuzzling her legs, and curling near the soft, glowing plants. Their fur reflected warm colors, a sign of comfort and trust. Throughout the morning, the aliens watched quietly from the platforms. Word of humanity's remarkable approach had spread quickly across the city. Officials, scholars, and ordinary citizens alike observed the creatures and the humans. Some were skeptical, but most were fascinated. They had seen the impossible. Humans could guide even the most fearful creatures to safety, inspire curiosity, and build trust without any force or technology. Alina and her team moved through the habitats with quiet precision. Every gesture was careful, every word soft and gentle. Humans offered small glowing fruits, guided the creatures toward safe resting spots, and observed their behavior with attention and respect. Nothing was rushed, nothing forced. Each choice the creatures made was their own, and the humans waited patiently for them to decide. Torin stepped closer, extending a hand slowly to one of the smaller creatures. It hesitated, flicking its ears, then pressed against his hand briefly before retreating. "It is remarkable," he whispered to Lyra. "Even when we attempt to interact, the creatures respond only because the humans showed them patience and trust. No other species could achieve this." Alina watched, her heart swelling with quiet pride. "It is not about force or ability," she said softly. "It is about giving creatures the space to choose. They learn to trust because we never rush, never push, and never react with fear or frustration. That is what makes it work." As the day wore on, the creatures became more confident. Some ventured to explore the streams, others climbed the gentle hills, and still others played quietly in small groups. The humans moved among them, speaking softly, extending hands slowly, and offering reassurance when needed. Even the most timid creatures began to approach humans willingly, their eyes bright with curiosity rather than fear. The alien children were perhaps the most fascinated. They had begun to imitate the humans' movements and speech patterns, kneeling carefully, extending hands slowly, and speaking in gentle tones. Some creatures responded to the children, pressing against them or exploring near them, showing that trust could be transferred through example. Alina smiled, kneeling beside a small child. "See," she said softly, "patience and understanding work everywhere. You don't need to force or command. Trust grows when you wait and listen." Torin and Lyra watched with admiration, realizing that humans had done more than calm creatures. They had taught a subtle lesson that could influence generations. The children who learned patience and empathy today would grow to value those qualities as adults. The creatures would continue to thrive in an environment of calm trust. And the aliens themselves were beginning to see a new way of interacting with life, one that relied not on power or control, but on understanding and connection. As the twin suns moved across the sky, the humans continued their careful guidance. They observed the creatures' interactions, offered comfort, and allowed the animals to make their own choices. A particularly timid creature, which had barely ventured from the edge of the habitat, stepped forward cautiously, brushing against Alina's leg. She smiled softly. "You see, you are safe here," she whispered. The aliens whispered among themselves, trying to understand the humans' methods. "They are not teaching by words alone," Lyra said. "It is their presence, their calm, their patience that guides the creatures. Intelligence in this form is unlike anything we know." Alina walked slowly through the habitat, observing the creatures and humans interacting. "It is simple," she said quietly. "Patience, understanding, and respect. Nothing more. No force, no machines, no fear. And yet it works. Everywhere we go, we can do this. Trust is universal. It can be built anywhere if we are willing to be patient and kind." By late afternoon, the city had begun to change subtly. The alien adults who had been skeptical were now approaching cautiously, observing the creatures and humans closely. They asked questions, experimented gently, and began to try the humans' methods themselves. Even those who had doubted were seeing results. The creatures responded positively to calm guidance, whether from humans or from aliens willing to follow their example. Alina and her team guided the humans and creatures alike through the afternoon, offering soft encouragement and careful guidance. The creatures moved freely, exploring streams, climbing gentle hills, and interacting with one another in playful ways. Humans observed, adjusted, and guided, but never forced. Every action was voluntary, every choice respected. Torin observed the interactions carefully. "This is more than just patience," he said to Lyra. "It is a philosophy, a way of life. Humans do not dominate, they do not demand. They offer calm understanding and respect, and the creatures, they respond willingly. Even the skeptics among us are beginning to see that our methods are limited compared to theirs." Lyra nodded. "Yes, we may have relied too much on technology, on control, on fear. Humans show us that true influence comes from trust, patience, and empathy. They are extraordinary." As evening approached, the habitats glowed softly, reflecting the creatures' fur and the gentle lights of the city. Humans continued their quiet guidance, ensuring that each creature was safe, comfortable, and able to make its own choices. Small groups of aliens, including some adults, joined the humans, kneeling carefully and extending hands slowly, speaking in gentle tones. The creatures responded positively, testing the aliens' calmness and exploring near them. Alina knelt beside a particularly timid creature, brushing her hand along its fur. "You see," she whispered softly, "you are safe, you can explore, you can trust. Nothing will hurt you here." The creature chirped softly and pressed against her hand, its fur glowing in warm colors. The aliens observed quietly, some whispering among themselves, others simply watching in awe. Humans, Torin said, his voice full of admiration, you have changed more than the creatures. You have begun to change us. We are seeing a new way to interact, to guide, and to inspire trust. This is remarkable. Alina smiled, standing and looking over the habitats. It is not about power, she said softly. It is about connection. Trust, patience, and understanding can achieve more than control or force ever could. That is what we hope to show the galaxy. As night fell over Zyphora, the city shimmered with glowing lights. The creatures rested peacefully, humans moved quietly among them, and aliens observed, learning and imitating. A quiet harmony settled over the habitats, a harmony built not by force, not by fear, but by understanding. The twin moons rose, reflecting softly in the streams and glowing plants. Alina stood on the platform, watching the creatures, humans and aliens together. The city had been transformed. The creatures were calm, the children were learning patience, and the adults were beginning to understand the value of trust. Humanity's presence had left a lasting impact. Alina turned to Torin and Lyra. Tomorrow, she said quietly, we will continue. There's always more to teach and always more to learn. But even now, look at what we have achieved. Trust can grow, understanding can spread, and perhaps this is just the beginning of something greater. Torin nodded, his skin flickering with thought. It is clear now, he said. Humans are extraordinary not because of strength or technology, but because of their intelligence in connection, patience, and empathy. Their legacy here will last for generations, not just with the creatures, but with our species as well. Alina smiled softly, watching as a small group of creatures explored near alien children who were imitating the humans' gestures. The creatures chirped happily, their fur glowing in gentle colors, signaling comfort and trust. It was a quiet scene, but it carried a powerful message. Humanity's approach had the power to inspire change, create harmony, and leave a lasting legacy. As the night deepened, Alina felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The creatures trusted them, the aliens were learning, and a new understanding had taken root. Humanity had shown that true intelligence was not measured by machines or strength, but by patience, empathy, and the ability to guide life with understanding. And on that quiet night, with glowing streams, softly chirping creatures, and curious alien observers, the galaxy witnessed something remarkable. Humans had arrived as strangers, yet they had left a legacy of trust, calm, and understanding. A reminder that empathy and patience were tools more powerful than fear, and that humanity, though seemingly fragile, could achieve wonders simply by connecting with life.